Hi guys, welcome back to Nyx Reads. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe if you love watching bookish content like I do, and give this video a thumbs up if you're just as excited as I am to watch everybody's year-end favorites videos. I am so excited to share these 10 books with you that are my favorite books of 2024. This year I was truly not able to rank them, so these are not going to be in a particular order. I tried to categorize them by genre to have it somewhat organized. So I'm going to start with the thrillers and murder mysteries in this list, because if you've been watching my channel, you know that a large chunk of my reading falls into those categories. My first favorite is The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. This is a perfect read for anybody who loves the Twilight Zone and or is a fan of true crime, which I'm personally not of the latter, but yet I still enjoyed this book immensely. This is one of the rare instances where I loved the dual POV, dual timeline take. In 1982, the night clerk Viv Delaney disappears during one of her night shifts in the Sundown Motel. 35 years later, her niece takes the exact same job at the same Sundown Motel that still exists to try to retrace what happened to her aunt. She wants to figure out what happened to her during that fateful night where she just disappeared. This book is so suspenseful. It was an absolute page turner. I wanted to keep reading to find out what comes next. It balances the mystery factor with the side of campiness that is absolutely enjoyable. The prose is very addictive, and it also explores the question of why so many women are obsessed with true crime. The cherry on top was for me that I was able to follow the murder mystery. I was able to put together the clues right before the ending and get to the conclusion myself. This was so enjoyable. I already had very high expectations for this book because I heard so many good reviews about it. It did not disappoint, and I cannot wait to pick up more books by this author. Book number 2 is a more serious thriller. It's False Witness by Karin Slaughter. This is such an uncomfortable book to read that it almost feels conflicting to give this book 5 stars. This book features the most chilling antagonist that I read about, because it is a man who enjoys hurting women for pleasure. That is a horror that is derived from the real world. In this story, our main character is Lee Colton, who has worked very hard to build herself an ordinary life. She is a mother. She is going through COVID. Yes, COVID is present in this book. She is recently going through a separation, a divorce, and she's juggling all of that while being a very successful defense attorney. In her job, she gets assigned to defend a wealthy man who is accused of sexual assault. This man turns out is no stranger, and it turns into the stomach-twisting cat and mouse game because this case digs up horrible secrets from Lee's past. I would say I came into this book mentally prepared because I heard in reviews of Karin Slaughter's books that the author portrays violence against women in a very realistic manner. I would say that it is indeed overwhelming and graphic, but I do think it comes across as not for a shock factor, but to understand what women can become the victims of. On top of that, the portrayal of substance abuse is also very raw and realistic. The pacing of this book is excellent. It is slow, but it punches you with revelations about Lee's life at just the right moments. The absolute highlight in this thriller is the well-fleshed out relationship between the two main characters. You can feel their battles with their inner demons, their suffering, and especially their guilt. Guilt is one of the main themes of this book, and it is so palpable. I'm already so impressed with Karin Slaughter, and I heard that this is not even one of her best ones, so I am very much looking forward to picking up more by this author. Moving on to a much lighter, cozy mystery. It's Nita Prose's The Mystery Guest. This is the only book on this list that I've in fact liked so much that I have already read it twice. This is in fact the second installment of the Maid series. The first one is called The Maid. It has the iconic red cover. You could technically read these apart, but I really recommend starting with book 1. But this in itself is actually a solid mystery, if you ask me. You just get more out of it character-wise if you read the first one before this. Molly the maid is back at the Regency Grand Hotel, and just like in the first book, another man drops dead at the hotel. This time it is the award-winning author J.D. Grimthorpe who dies during an author event at the hotel. She once again has to navigate her co-workers, her work, and being in the middle of an investigation. This is a very character-driven book. Molly's voice, her narrative voice, is very distinct. One of the reasons is because she is neurodivergent, and another reason is she expresses herself often in a very old-fashioned way. She gets that from her late grandmother who used to live with Molly. She raised her. In this book, Molly's grandma plays a very central role in all of the flashback scenes that we see. What I really appreciate in this book is how much more emotional the story is, and it shows off how strong Molly can be in the face of adversity. Often one of the weak points in cozy mysteries is that the actual mystery is not very solid, but in this case I really enjoyed how the mystery unfolds and I was able to follow along with the clues and figure it out myself. This book definitely wins the superlative of having the most lovable heroine. My fourth favorite, and the last book in the category of thrillers and murder mysteries, is a classic. It's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. This is considered one of her most controversial but also unique installments of the Poirot novels. This murder mystery features her infamous Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. In this book, the wealthy businessman Roger Ackroyd is found murdered in his study, and Poirot has to come out of his retirement to help investigate the case. If you have read Agatha Christie before, you know that the POV in her books changes a lot, and in this case, it's the local doctor, Dr. Shepherd, and through him and his sister, who is the biggest town gossip, we actually get a lot of intel from the people living in this small town, which I really enjoyed. To me, this is an absolutely successful mystery where the reader can follow the clues and the developments. Additionally, Poirot's very full of himself, quite arrogant attitude really shines through in this novel. He is, while still being lovable, quite eccentric. Obviously, there's quite a lot of twists and red herrings in this book, very Christie style, but there's one development in here that is very unique. In my personal opinion, this should not be your first Agatha Christie or Poirot, but also not the only one. But regardless, I've also seen reviews of people who read this as their first Agatha Christie and they still really enjoyed it. Moving on to the genre of nonfiction. I unfortunately only have one nonfiction book that made my favorites list this year, and that is solely because I didn't read that many books this year. But the one nonfiction book that had me talking about it and thinking about it the most, even after I put it down, is Nuclear War by Annie Jacobsen. This is the best nonfiction I've read in 2024, and this was written by an investigative journalist. This is a dramatized and compelling scenario of what would happen if a nuclear missile were inbound towards the United States. This book is told in a structure by what happens in the seconds and minutes after this missile is detected. I do want to point out that this is a very US-centric book. So this concentrates on what high-ranking individuals do in key military posts in the United States. The author really deglamorizes atomic bombs and politicians in general, I'd say, and she calls out how billions and billions of dollars are spent every single year on programs that are so inherently flawed. This book will point out how we are one misunderstanding away from total apocalypse due to a faulty system and lack of communication between individuals. She really presses on the irony of how highly prepared the scenario of a nuclear war is, but that it really robs any man of reason. Imagine the President of the United States has exactly 6 minutes at information given to launch a missile in response. Not if, but more where. As you can hear, this is a very bleak portrait of humanity and nuclear bombs. So if you want to feel humbled by humanity's hunger for self-destruction, and you want to feel how our lives hang on the balance of the whims and paranoias of a few politicians, then this is a book for you. Book number 6 on this list is the only YA novel that made it into my favorites. And before you run away, this book is a testament to how powerful YA can be. It's Challenger Deep by Neal Shusterman. This is an intimate and emotional story about mental illness by one of my favorite authors of all time. And this is a book about a teenager's onset of schizophrenia. And while the main character is fictional, this is a fictionalized story, the author actually based this on his own son, which makes it even more emotional to read. Karin Bosch is a brilliant high school student who suddenly finds himself aboard a pirate ship that's headed towards Challenger Deep, which is the deepest part of the ocean. This is an unconventional storytelling format. It immerses the reader in how mental illness can present itself in an extent that I have not read before. The beginning is absolutely confusing because you're switching between Karin's real life, but then muddled sequences, dreamlike sequences that happen aboard this ship, which as you read on, it becomes clear that these are delusions. As you advance in the book, you gain more clarity and understand where Karin is and what he is going through exactly. It is an extremely profound novel that teaches the reader that different diagnoses are just a form of labels for mental illness because it presents itself differently in every patient. It is very heartbreaking to know that the author and his son went through this exactly pretty much along with other people, but it does end on a hopeful note, even though I'm not going to give away what happens in the end. This is the most unique and impressive book that I have read on mental illness, and I highly recommend it, even to non-YA readers. Book number 7 is my only romance pick for this list. It's Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. This has been translated from Spanish to English. Like Water for Chocolate wins the superlative of the most surprising 5 stars I gave this year. I did not expect this at all. I cannot help but compare it a little to 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez because it also features magical realism, but this one has a serious telenovela twist in it. It is very dramatic. This book takes place in the beginning of the 20th century during the Mexican Revolution. Our main character is Nita. She's the youngest daughter in the family and she is forbidden to marry because she's supposed to grow old with her mother and take care of her for the rest of her life. But she does fall in love with Pedro, who instead of marrying her, goes and marries her sister. A chain of tragedies ensue and it is fueled by magic, by passion, and by food. For this book, you do have to suspend your disbelief. There's obviously insta-love in here, and it is incredibly melodramatic, but the sensuality and the longing is dripping of the pages. I love that food takes such a central place in the story, and it is also the central vehicle of the magic that is just somehow present, not really explained, but it obviously influences the story and the developments a lot. To me, this was an unexpected, perfect summer read because it reads fast, it is not very long, it is absolutely passionate, and it is deliciously bizarre. I would recommend this to anybody who has indulged in crazy telenovela style series before. Moving on to the genre of contemporary fiction. Book number 8 is The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. Similar to the book before, I expected to give this like a 3 or a 3.5 stars. I did not expect to rate this book so highly, but in the end, it really resonated with me the most out of all the books that I've read on this list. This is a quirky story where Lauren returns to her London flat to her husband that just emerged from the attic, but she doesn't have a husband. This person came out of nowhere. She quickly discovers that every time she sends the husband back up the attic, a new husband emerges, and every single time her past and present completely changes. For instance, if a husband emerges from the attic, it could be that she's been married to him for the last 10 years, so all of her friends and family suddenly know him and know her being married to him. I loved how this book that seems very straightforward takes a very unforeseeable turn. It is an entertaining lesson in how the partner really impacts your body, your friendships, your mood, and all of your other relationships around you. As the story goes on and Lauren gets to trial quite a few different husbands, she learns a thing or two about herself, obviously. As I was reading this book, I realized this is the type of story where I think it's hard to find an ending that satisfies all readers. It's hard to close a book like this, but I personally really liked the ending. For me, it was also just the right time and place to read this book. It made me think about my own relationship and where my future is going. And I think it's very funny to think about if one day you wake up, you have no recollection of your partner or your husband, and you suddenly open your phone and see all the photos and text messages. What would you think of your partner, of your relationship, or the version of yourself that you are with that partner? The second to last book you might have already read because it is quite popular. It's Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is the first 5-star I gave in 2024. If you like dark humor and you don't mind shaking your head in disbelief every 5 seconds, this is for you. The story follows June Hayward and her frenemy Athena Liu. Athena is a successful published writer, so everything that June aspires to be. She is incredibly jealous of her. When Athena dies in a freak accident while June is there with her, June decides to steal the unpublished new masterpiece that Athena was writing and sell it as her own. As if that is not already bad enough. So the book is about Chinese laborers during World War I. June quickly decides that being a white woman publishing this book is not a good look. So she slaps on a racially ambiguous name, chooses an author photo that looks racially ambiguous, and sells the story as her own book. June is the definition of an unreliable narrator. You could say that she's entirely delusional. She is so blissfully ignorant of racial microaggressions and structural racism. You just want to wring her neck. This is an absolutely page-turning piece of contemporary fiction, and it is just as enraging as it is entertaining. Does it solve all the problems in the literary world? No, but it is just a damn good book. I do want to give a special shout out to the narrator of the audiobook because she has the snarkiest voice you could imagine, which fits the story so well. Her name is Helen Laser. The last book on this list belongs to the genre of gothic fiction. It's We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Last year, The Haunting of Hill House was on my favorites list. Now it's this book by the same author. This is an engrossing gothic tale about a strange girl whose nickname is Mary Cat. She lives with her sister and her uncle, and they have extraordinary family secrets. This is a peculiar story about isolation and even mob mentality. I would say that the village, the small village where this takes place, is a character on its own. There's not a lot of plot happening in this book. It is really more a character study on one of the themes are innocence and darkness. You get a lot of insight into Mary Cat's intrusive thoughts and her sister's reclusiveness. Mary Cat displays some compulsive behavior. She likes to repeat certain rituals to ward off anything bad coming to the house. It is a very slow-moving, eccentric book, and I cannot wait to reread this book because I know that I'm going to discover other new details that I have not noticed before. Shirley Jackson is just a master in writing very strange characters and discovering what things like isolation can do to a person. These were my 10 favorite books of 2024. I really hope that one of these books made it onto your TBR and that I was able to convey to you why I really enjoyed these books so much. Please don't forget to share with me what your absolute favorite book of 2024 is. I really do want to check it out. Leave the title and author for me in the description. I want to say a huge thank you to the people who have been still watching my channel, even though my uploads have been a bit scarce in the second half of the year. I don't know about you, but one of the things that I get the most excited about in the new year is to be able to set up new reading goals. If you've come to this point of the video and you just want to let me know that you're still watching, why don't you leave me a cat emoji? Thank you so much for watching. I wish you a great 2025 reading year. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.